Here's the workflow of how I made this image. It's a design concept and character portrait for a space opera graphic novel I'm developing. The expression, emotion, and pose of this drawing is very important. So to capture the expression and emotionality that I want to convey in this image that I'm making with AI tools, I first sketch out the initial pose and expression. I don't need to sketch out all the details at this point, just the primary pose and face. I then bring the image into Photoshop and start cleaning it up, and also fixing the proportions. After that is done, I then start drawing over the design of the outfit and other details like his hair. I also laid down the colors to give the image generator a guide. I use Stable Diffusion in the automatic 1111 interface. You can install it locally on your computer for free. Takes a bit of a learning curve, but it is very powerful. So now with the image guide, I bring it into Stable Diffusion using ControlNet. ControlNet locks in the image generations to match the pose and shape of the input image, and these are the resulting image generations. You'll notice there's a lot of errors in them. This is one of the difficult balance when trying to convert an image. Even with ControlNet, it's going to change a lot of things if you wanted to add more detail. I pick the best images out of the generations, and then I bring them into Photoshop and I start photo bashing the best elements from each of them, constructing a much more precise and finished image. And this stage does take a decent amount of digital illustrative work. You'll notice the image is looking fairly medieval at this stage. The reason being that it would confuse the image generator too much if I was trying to push it towards a medieval style and a sci-fi style. And so for these first generations, I was primarily getting it to do the medieval elements of it. I'm going to clean up most of the other areas just to make it easier as I regenerate and keep working on this image, but I'm also going to add a kind of foundation for the sci-fi elements that I am going to be adding next in Stable Diffusion. The limbs and rotation points for an exoskeleton. Bringing into Stable Diffusion, I do a new prompt focusing on sci-fi mecha type elements, and then in-paint it so it only generate the hands, feet, and limbs of the exoskeleton. You'll see the prompt I used at the bottom of the screen here, and the various different generations I produced. I'm also using 3 LoRAs in this prompt. You can kind of consider them additions to the primary generating model. I'm using the noise offset LoRa, add detail LoRa, and a mecha detail LoRa that adds really cool sci-fi robotic kind of details. Working with additional LoRas, finding the right ones that work, knowing their strengths and limitations, all of these things are skills that you develop with practice by using these tools. Out of all the different generations I make here, I pick the best ones and once again start to compile them again, photo bashing the generations together to work towards the image and final result that I want. And it's not just cut and pasting. You'll notice that I'm actually illustrating and painting over top, warping and correcting elements as I go through this process. In fact, I spend far more time digitally illustrating this image than I do in the actual image generator itself. A lot of people who use AI image generators actually give up only at the generation phase, and if it's not giving them the image they want, they don't take it any further. But by applying additional artistic abilities in different mediums, you can go so much further than the base generations you get out of the image generator. And the image isn't bad where it's at the moment, but I want to increase the details, make it look better, and bring it into a higher resolution. So I take this image back into Stable Diffusion, and I do something different at this point. After regenerating some of the limbs and making a better rotation point, I increase the resolution of the image in Photoshop, bring that larger version into Stable Diffusion, and then I use the Ultimate SD Upscaler. This enables me to generate a higher resolution images in sections. And so you'll see it generate in sections as it goes down the image. And these are the generations that I make in this process, and you'll notice that it is much more detailed, and also the style changes because I switch the model to a more animated style model, which has a much more stylistic, cool look. The model I switched to is called Rev Animated. And check out the details here, it is already looking so much cooler. So now it's time to add the sword. I made the 3D model of this sword in SketchUp, and then I grab the model and put it on an angle to match the pose of the image, export it, and bring it into the image, scaling it and rotating it to match. And then of course I do some digital edits to be able to merge the sword with the image. But this is only to get the position of the sword. It doesn't match the image. It doesn't have the right details, and so I need to bring the sword into Stable Diffusion. You'll notice that I rotate the hilt so it's positioned vertically. This is just one of the quirks that you'll learn from using Stable Diffusion regularly. It's able to generate swords better when they're positioned vertically because it understands symmetry better with a sword that's vertical as opposed to if it's lying horizontal. And so I make the prompt to match, I bring in the hilt, adjust the settings, and then start generating a much more detailed hilt using the same model so it will match the same style. This is kind of similar in rendering out a 3D model into a finished image with correct lighting and so on, except here I'm using an AI image generator to achieve a similar result. I bring a couple of those results in and merge the better elements from each, also correcting some errors, and the hilt is now looking much better, matching the style of the image. I do the same process with the blade, rotating it vertically again. I was thinking of having an energy edge, which happens to the sword when it is used, but ultimately I decided to go without the energy on the very edge, and just paint in some of the indents so the image generator can latch onto that when I bring it into Stable Diffusion. I use multiple control nets to lock in the shape, specifically the depth setting and canny setting. After a couple of generations, I bring it back into Photoshop, correct some errors, then it's time to merge it to the image. After it's connected to the hilt, I am now going to digitally illustrate the shadow onto the character so it looks like it's merged properly, that it's actually in the image. Then I go on to correct some other elements. I really like the rotation point on the elbow, so I copy that to the shoulder. Fixing up the position of the sword, now it's time to add even further details. So I separate the character silhouette from the background and I start now fixing up many of these finer small errors. These are artifacts, things that don't really make sense, errors in kind of the position or flow of the colors and lines. And you'll notice that this is quite a lot of digital illustrative work. Like I said, I spent more time in Photoshop with this image than in Stable Diffusion. I liked the feet better in one of the previous generations, so I grabbed those and now bringing them back on to the primary character figure and continue with corrections. And this also gives you a closer up look at some of the errors in the finer details. If you didn't know how to fix these in Photoshop, they would just be left in the image. I start to change the colour here because the character is supposed to be a type of commoner or peasant, and the red was looking a bit too upper class. So giving him a more dulled green tunic with a red cloak ended up looking much better for the character background. I want the hands to look very clean and precise. You're probably aware that AI image generators really struggle with hands. So to make really good ones, well, you need to do a bit of extra work. People might say, is all this extra work worth it? Why not just draw it in the first place? The answer is obvious. AI-assisted art looks way better than what I can do by hand. It's using advanced tools to give me an awesome looking picture. But the fact that I do know how to draw and use Photoshop is essential in getting the results that I want. I decide that I'm not happy with the design of his gauntlets, so I grab a gauntlet design from a previous generation, and then I add it to one hand, but then I need to kind of resculpt it to match it on the other arm. And then with a proper guide, once it's looking better, it's not going to take too much of a generation to be able to merge it and blend it and make it look much better. And what I mean by that is a generation with very low denoising strength. That means it won't actually change heaps about the image, but it will regenerate the entire image, merging everything together nicely. When I regenerated the arms, it actually did some pretty good details on their hands, and so I grab those elements and reconstruct the hands to make them look like they are kind of robotic gloves. And so this is the result from working with the higher resolution generations, with a lot of digital illustration, refining the image to a much more finished state. But the new gauntlets I generated here also have some really cool lights kind of integrated, and so I want similar glowing effects on his boots. And so I make some edits, bring those back into Stable Diffusion to regenerate them, and then take the best elements of multiple generations, photo bashing them together. Also, lots of edits done manually to merge and make it just look so much better. Also correcting some proportions and shapes of the feet. And here is the finished image, and I just love how this has turned out. It reflects the image I had in my mind perfectly, this kind of blend between science fiction and medieval. Also reflecting the character, the reason why he's looking down is that he's burdened by a curse. There's literally an evil entity that is whispering in his mind, trying to get him to kill all the people he loves. And he has to constantly resist that influence, while also trying to fight off some terrible monsters and threats to his home planet. And that initial emotion, the downcast expression from the drawing that I started out with, has been preserved perfectly. I also did a lot of extra work to make a background for this image, but making backgrounds and things, that's probably for another video. After putting a lot of work into the background, upscaling it and merging it, this is the final result right here. That giant tower in the background is an interstellar hub that's important for the story that this image concept is depicting. Again, very happy with the results. And to take it to its final step, I paint over an energy shield and lighting effects. This was all done manually, except I took the bubble into Stable Diffusion to do a single generative process just to give a bit of texture to the surface of the shield. Everything else was digitally painted on manually. And you can really see that the energy shield is generated by the belt he is wearing. And this is the final image. And once again, I am blown away by what you can make with AI image generative tools. As a writer, world builder, and creative, being able to depict my worlds, characters, and stories to such incredible detail is a true gift. And these tools are available for free. They are literally the most powerful artistic tools mankind has ever made, and they are available for free to everyone who wants to use them. Nothing this powerful or like this has ever been given to all people for free, and I don't think enough people understand how incredible that is. What an amazing gift and blessing. And if you're going to say that they're unethical because they are built off of other artists' work, I have videos addressing those concerns in detail. If you'd like to see a high-resolution version of this image to really see the details, I've posted a copy of it on my DeviantArt page. There'll be a link in the description. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope me showing you this process has let you know what you can do with AI generative tools, and the additional work that is sometimes required when you really want to make an AI-assisted artwork depicting something specific, because AI image generators still cannot do everything for you. It requires a lot of human creative input, and it is also so much fun to do. It is such an incredible creative outlet. And you might have a lot of fun giving some of these tools a try yourself, so I hope this has helped in some way.